Agricultural Development Fund is under the NSIA. And also, we've received other briefings on the presidential initiatives. Today, we'll talk a little bit more about what the NSIA is doing. And as we all know that the NSIA is an investment institution of the Federation set up to manage funds in excess of budgeted hydrocarbon revenues. Its mission is to play a leading role in driving sustained economic development for the benefit of all Nigerians through building a savings base for the Nigerian people, enhancing the development of Nigeria's infrastructure, as well as providing stabilization support in times of economic issues. As we all know, we're currently having some economic issues, and the issue of fertilizer is one of them. He'll throw a little bit of spotlight on that issue, and as well as other issues that the NSIA is currently handling. I think recently we had in the news that NSIA has made some bit of profit in the management of the resources that is under it. As our protocol is, we'll have a presentation from the MD CEO for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes as the case may be, after which we'll take questions solely based on his presentation and also issues pertaining to other initiatives being managed by the NSIA. At this juncture, it is my honor to invite the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, Mr. Uche Orji, to the podium for his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Senior Special Advisor to the President on Media, Mr. Femi Adesina and Garba Shehu, Mrs. Lorito Onoche, everybody else in the room. May I please be allowed to stand on the existing protocol that had been established by Uche. Thank you for the introduction, really appreciate it. Good morning again. Today we will talk about PFI and also talk about any other thing you may want to ask regarding the NSIA. We had robust engagements with you earlier this week regarding the NSIA 2021 results, and so we'll also be available to take as many questions as you may have on those. Today's focus, however, is on the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative. And the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative is the first of the presidential programs that the NSIA was involved in and was invited to participate in, and we're very truly honored that the President chose the NSIA to drive this program. And I dare say it's probably one of the, if not the most successful of the presidential initiatives that we have seen, not just because we have had the privilege of being a part of it, and that is actually something we are truly grateful to the President for, but it's also because it has had a real impact. So what is the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative, and why did the President decide that we do this? I'll tell you a background story first, and then we can go into the presentation. December 2016, we were invited to have a discussion. Many of you may have been aware. The President went to Morocco, had discussions with the King of Morocco, and subsequently later went to Russia, had discussions with the President of Russia. And part of those discussions was the fertilizer components needed to make fertilizer in Nigeria. Most of them come from Morocco and Russia. And the conversation was, how do we make available to Nigerians high quality fertilizer, revive our domestic but moribund blending industry, and what sort of collaboration we can have with those countries to bring those raw materials in and produce fertilizer locally. Many of you here, especially ones who are not farmers, will understand that when a farmer asks for fertilizer, most times he asks for NPK. So what is NPK? N is nitrogen, but mostly comes from urea. P is phosphate, which is something that is made from phosphate rock that mostly comes from Morocco. And K is potash, that actually, up until recently, we were buying the bulk of it from, almost all of it from Russia. That is what makes your NPK fertilizer. When you blend it in different mixes, you make what they call NPK 20-10-10, or you can make NPK 15-15-15. Depending on the soil type you're in, different blends of this fertilizer produces the NPK fertilizer that you need. Now, up until PFI, what was happening? We were importing the whole fully blended fertilizer. No respect was paid to our domestic industry, our domestic blending plant. We're just importing it, subsidizing it, and most of it were not actually getting to the farmers. Every year, the government had to spend a huge amount of money to pay subsidy, and there were complaints of shortages, prices were high, our domestic blending industry were moribund completely. I think at the time, only 4 were operating at about 10% capacity utilization. So the president said, okay, how are we going to address this? How do we get high quality fertilizer to farmers at a reasonable price? And that was the origin of the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative. And this was bring in phosphate from Morocco, bring in potash from Russia, or wherever we might get it, even Canada. We have domestic capacity in urea, first with Indorama, now with Dangote. Why do we leave that and still import urea from other people? So blend those three together, get the domestic industry to come together and blend the fertilizer. We create job locally, and that is what the essence of PFI is. Bring these raw materials in, bring down the cost, make it cheap, make it high quality, make it available, create jobs in the country, and that is the essence of PFI. So I thought before going through page by page, let me create that background. I hope it's clear. Good. So let's go through what the PFI has been, what has been achieved. So like I said, the objective was to deliver commercially significant quantities. No, I think it's okay. I think it's okay. Now, and the program was designed to also adopt an import substitution approach. Why import what you can make locally? 60% of the raw material required to make fertilizer is available in Nigeria. Like I said, urea is available. Limestone is a fourth thing used as a filler to bind the products together. It's also available in Nigeria, but we will leave it and then import. It didn't make any sense. Of course, there was fiscal resources that were scarce. 2016 was a particularly tough year because fertilizer was not even available, was expensive. And there was that whole issue of the trying to create an alternative. The battery is gone. Battery is gone completely. Can I change to something else? This has full battery. Okay. So that was it. So the question now becomes, how do we implement it? So the NSIA was asked to create a special purpose vehicle called Npk. Npk, many of you may have seen it, is NSIA Agriculture Investment Company -Npk to emphasize the fertilizer element of Npk. And this program started in the 2017 cycle. Subsequently, of course, to immortalize the program, we have changed the name of this vehicle from Npk to PFI Npk. In the same way you're seeing us in the PIDF programs that we've been privileged also, immortalizing those names by giving it the right name. The Presidential Fertiliser Initiative, NPK, is now the name of the company. Some of it was funded through the Real Sector Support Facility of the Central Bank, which provided some funding. Part of it through the NSIA, and also NSIA invested its own capital as well to make sure that these monies were available to bring in these raw materials. Next page, please. Who's in charge? Okay. What was the situation in 2017? Like I said, extremely high price of fertilizer that had an impact on inflation, balance sheet constraints of the federal government, dependence on importation leading to moribund blending industry. Import dependence on FX demand was very high, and actually there were all kinds of things that were going on with some of those FX demands, some of which were not really real. Some of the people involved were not doing some of the right things. So these were all the things the president wanted to eliminate and solve. And we were ignoring our locally available raw materials also, which is important. And I'm going to speak to something later on By the way, both potash and phosphate are available in Nigeria. Yeah, we've just abandoned it, never really bothered to develop it. So some of the things that we're working on now, the president directed us to work on last year, was to actually work on developing the local phosphate and potash industry. The potash, the phosphate you see in Morocco starts from Sokoto and runs all the way through a vein to Morocco. So we have it locally. We just haven't bothered to develop it, right? So now we're working on developing that. It's important because this, actually for the first time, our consciousness has been awoken on making sure we solve this issue. The same with potash. Potash runs all the way from Gombe through Bauchi all the way to Benue. Again, available in the country. We just need to dig it up from the ground, granulate it, clean it up, and we're able to sell it locally. So these are things that I think are very important in the fertilizer industry. Thirdly, to even solve this issue of ammonia, Dangote is up and running. The NSIA itself signed a joint venture 50-50 with OCP of Morocco to now build an ammonia plant in Nigeria. We've selected to build it in Akwa Ibom State. Work is ongoing. There's a lot of sample soil selection. We're now about to start selecting the EPC companies. Unfortunately, we had hoped to have finished that process last year, but we're delayed a little bit by COVID. But we're hoping that by 2025, that plant will be up and running as well, producing ammonia. So these things are here. Urea is made from natural gas. We have it in abundance in Nigeria. So these are all some of the benefits of PFIs and forcing all of us to think how we can use domestic products to solve our problems. Next page, please. So altogether, what has this program done? First of all, last year, the PFI program itself, actually not only did it not need subsidy last year, the program itself, and this is separate from the NSIA's profit, the program itself turned the profit. Again, think about it. Years of hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidy. This restructured program now in itself was profitable, right? So I think it's important to have that message clear. It has been a successful program of the president. And for us, it's been a real pleasure to be part of that. Second thing is obviously reduction in significant use of foreign exchange. As at the end of 2020, we had 31 blending plants, again, all running at full utilization. This number will be updated because at the end of 2021, we were at 64. As at today, we've just cleared an additional 8. We have 72 blending plants. Think about it. 4 actually were what we started with. Finished the first year with 7. And now we're at 72 blending plants. At the end of 2020, it was 31, 64. I'll show you the data later on. Combined capacity, I will show you all later. So this is now an industry. As at the end of 2020, 50,000 direct and indirect jobs were created, and this is everything from transportation to blending to bagging to distribution to smallholder people who are selling fertilizer in the industry, to people that are even making food, because we track all of these things. We track the activity at the blending plant. I remember the first blending plant I visited, it looked like it was just completely bad. There was nothing going on. I went back there 6 months later, lines of trailers, people serving them, bags. I wish I had videos to show you, but this has been something that we're all very, very proud of and very happy with. Of course, the way the industry was working also at the time was because the NSIA through the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative was pushing it, we controlled the materials. So people didn't have the power to hoard, and it just continued to flow through the market. And I think the immediate impact then was to take the price of fertilizer that was sold at an average of 9,000 to 13,000 naira down to 5,000 naira in the first instance. Now, obviously, the world has changed. Okay, 2022 is a different period for us. Russia, Ukraine, Belarus crisis, big problem. Okay, big problem. So we'll address that because we all need to we come to this program with a sense of being transparent with you on some of the issues. But also farming outputs. So we've seen that reflect. Next page, please. Now, in 2020, November 3rd, the president restructured the program, the PFI Npk, as follows. Before then, up until 2020, NSIA handled everything from transportation to raw material procurement and all that, and we were becoming constrained because of the size of our balance sheet. The essence of the restructuring was now to transfer the funding pressure to the fertilizer blenders. So how does it work? You own a blending plant. You come to NSIA, the NSIA will tell you, look, this is the price from Morocco, this is the price from Russia, this is the price from Indorama. You put down cash or bank guarantee, and we will give you the raw material. So you can buy as much as you want, but you have to go and get a bank guarantee or get cash. 2, you have to transport it yourself because it had become too big for us. From 300,000 metric tons, it's now 1 to 1.5 million metric tons. So it was a bit too big. But we didn't want to constrain it. So the idea was for people to put up their own funding and many of them have been able to do so. I mean, last year was remarkable. We received over 100 billion naira in cash and guarantees from blenders. Think about it. In 2017, this industry was moribund. To the point now that people are willing to put their own capital investments. All these blending plants are investments. The average blending plant will cost you, I don't know, $1 million to build. So people are actually investing. And I'll show you the distribution metrics across the country as well. And the pricing, of course, transitioned a little bit more to market. But I think it allowed us to now be able to, the program became simpler and a lot less complex. And in terms of making sure that everybody was able to also contribute, especially particularly the blenders. That restructuring is part of what made it quite interesting for people to continue to. Initially, we were afraid that it will make some people to leave the industry, but actually what has happened is the opposite. More and more people have joined the industry, and we're very, very happy about that. Next page, please. So, as at the end of 2021, the program achieved almost a production of about 1.5 million metric tons. It started with 300,000 metric tons. It's gone to 1.5 million metric tons. We were able to acquire as much as 9 vessels of ammonium phosphate from OCP, 6 from Russia. UFCL is a Russian, Uralkali Fertilizer Company Limited is a Russian entity that does potash. We procured 307,000 metric tons from Indorama. All of this came through NPK into 52 fertilizer blending plants at the end of 2021. So, and I know I did say 64, but 64 were cleared, 52 were actually the ones who participated in the program. We received over 100 billion naira in bank guarantees from 23 plants and 132 billion naira in cash from those plants. Again, think about it. The industry are now investing. This is not NSIA capital, this is the industry capital. And this is the raw materials we procured through the years. DAP is phosphate, it's called diammonium phosphate. MOP is muriate of potash, which is one from Russia. Something called ammonium sulfate, which is used in some types of soil, some of them asphalt especially, it was given to them, and urea. Now, I just want to make it clear, the restructuring has removed any risk to the NSIA's balance sheet. It's now transferred to the blenders. Very important, because I think you need to understand that the essence of the restructuring is not to create big government. It's actually for the government to help the industry stabilize, get them to revive, step back, let the industry run itself. And this is the step-by-step transformation of the PFI. So at the moment, we are facilitating, but our balance sheet is not at risk. Okay? So I think it's important you understand the role that we have played. First stage, balance sheet was at risk because we needed to help them stand. They have now stood on their own 2 feet. We're now taking back some of that restructuring effort, transferring the funding pressure now to the blenders. People said to me, oh, the blenders can't afford it. The president said, go ahead. And the blenders put up, like I said, 100 billion naira of bank guarantees and 132 billion naira of cash. This is money that came from them. So it has been successful. These people, don't forget, they were moribund, bankrupt practically before PFI started. That's investment, that's success as far as I'm concerned. We'll move on to the next page. Where are all these blending plants? So like I said, 64, because so let me describe something for you. The clearing process. So you start a blending plant, you want to be cleared. You have to go and get a number of certifications. You have to get certification from Ministry of Agriculture, Farm Input Support Services. You have to go to National Security Advisor to get verification that your plant can handle because of the sensitive materials. You have to go to the association who will now come and inspect your blending plant to be sure that you can actually do what you said you can do. These 3 steps must be completed. before the blending association now writes NSIA. The NSIA now writes the National Security Advisor to verify. Once that's done, your blending plant is now approved. So important. Agriculture, National Security Advisor, the Fertilizer Association, very important. Because they're the ones that will say, look, your plants will do what they said. And they've gone to some places and said, no, it's not a blending plant. This is actually something else. You can't do it. So they've been able to, in those three places, make sure we address security, make sure we address capability, and then make sure that we address quality control, which is the role of the Farm Input Support Services of the Ministry of Agriculture. So these are blending plants everywhere. Of course, I think one thing that is clear, we're still having, because of the issue happening in the Northeast, we haven't seen that many blending plants approved in the Northeast, but a lot of work is going on there. We have now in Gombe and we have in Bauchi, but we're hoping, because we do need to have, once we get the clearance from the NSA's office, we'll have more and more effort being made in having the blending plants, mostly now in the Northeast. There are a couple in Yola that are being worked on at the moment. Hopefully we'll get those, because it's needed there, because that adds to the transportation costs into those regions, right? But because of urea insecurity, all those issues, that's why you've seen the Northeast looking a bit blank. But if I showed you this graph in 2017, only 4. Now you see 64 at the end of 2022, going up to 72. Like I said, 8 have just been processed, and so many of them will be dealing with this. Next page, please. Okay. So where are we in 2022? Okay, so 2022, I know one question many of you are going to ask me is, potash, because there was all these headlines about potash difficulty, potash difficulty. It was true. There was potash difficulty. 30% of the world's potash come from Russia and Belarus. So when the crisis started, there was blockade, there was sanctions, there were all kinds of issues. Initially, we couldn't get potash. But now I'm glad to report to you that we have solved the potash problem. Okay? On June 3rd, the first vessel will arrive from Russia. June 6th, the second vessel will arrive from Canada. The president gave us instruction, go and solve it, find it wherever you can, bring it into the country. We will have enough potash between now and the middle of June for all our needs for the year. Last year, we had enough to produce up to 40% of the country's need in inventory already in the warehouses. So that's coming out. Central Bank is one of the big buyers, they're releasing it. But anybody who's holding needs to be aware that from next week, all this potash problem will be solved, right? We had carte from the president, go find it. The Nigeria High Commission in Canada helped us to discuss with the Canadians, because we're not dealing with the Canadians before. So we're able to discuss with them, manage to pay. That vessel is loaded, it's on its way, arrives June 6th, correct? June 6th, the vessel from Canada arrives, the vessel from Russia arrives on June 3rd. So there'll be fertilizer across the country. So that's potash. Obviously, we have paid for urea. Phosphate, we're very lucky. We bought 5 vessels of phosphate last year from Morocco, OCP. And luckily for us, we bought it, and the price has now gone up even further 25%. So that's savings that we're bringing to the country just by acting quickly and acting decisively on the authority of the president. Now, countries that do not have such a coordinated program are scrambling. And here I want to make an appeal. It is not fair what some people are doing. Some people are taking this thing and now, it's everywhere. It's in Mali, it's in Chad, it's in Niger Republic, it's in Cameroon. The president worked very hard to get this thing. Let us make sure that Nigeria is not being sabotaged. So some work needs to be done to ensure that this thing doesn't just get smuggled across the borders, because it's happening, and that is something that needs to be stopped. Okay, not to the point that we are going to starve ourselves, but it's not even right for all this effort made by the president to be dismissed by some people. But I'm glad to report to you, availability will not be a problem. The potash problem, which was the biggest problem to solve last year, we've solved it. Earlier this year, we've solved it. And I believe even more are available to come to us. And that's purely because there was a focus, there was a coordinated program called the Presidential Fertiliser Initiative to drive fertilizer. Next page. And I'm going to stop here because I think it's important that we take as many questions as we can. So the impact of Russia, like I said, we have reallocated. Russia invading Ukraine, big challenge. The real problem that has had is obviously raw material prices have all struggled. But we are now buying the most important material that we need from Canada now, as well as Russia, so we have no problem there. Port congestion, we're working very hard to improve port berthing capacity, because at the moment we have so many vessels now pouring in, and the ports we are struggling to clear many of them because of inadequate port capacity in Nigeria. But we're working on that. And of course, there are all kinds of other issues like I can't really address other issues. My job is to ensure that we have these raw materials available and ensure that the blending plants are working. And across all the necessary entities, everybody is pulling together to make sure that these programs and these benefits continues to be retained. So it's a very short presentation. I know it's not as long as what we've done before, but this is a PFI. And it continues, and I'm hoping that more blending plants continue to join the program. I will pause here and take any questions. Thank you very much. And take a seat. It's okay. Cheers. I need my microphone. Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, MD CEO NSIA, Mr. Uche Orji, for that presentation. We'll go straight into the questions. Like our chairman would always say, no double barrel questions. Just try and make sure your question is quite concise. We'll take 2 batches of 4 questions each. I'll start with Felix, Anthony, Leon, and Chesa. Sorry, hope I got the name. Yes, Harry, Awromibe, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next set, Adesua, yourself, Yemi. Okay, then you. So we'll take the first 4, he'll answer, and then we'll take the next 4. We'll start with Felix. Thank you.
My name is Felix Ona. I write for Reuters. Yes, the country was worried about the Russia, Belarus supply of this potash thing. Now you said it's solved. I would like to know how many tons are coming from Russia. You say we're still getting supply from Russia. And then how many tons is coming from Russia? How many is coming from Canada? Thanks.
Yeah, my name is Tony Aileme. I write for Business Day. My question has to do with, good way at tackling the investment part of the fertilizer issues to ensure that they are available. What are we doing with the supply side of it? Because there's a kind of cartel that is making it impossible for this product to be available in the market. When I was told yesterday that you were going to do this briefing, I quickly made some inquiries, and I'm a farmer. I have a small farm where also I need the fertilizer too. And I know how difficult it is in my little environment in Kuje, and it's a big issue that people don't get it. And the only one, I want to tell you, that people were struggling to get came from one institution of the federal government that I had to sort of divert some of them into the open market. So, sir, can we also tackle the supply part? Thank you. Leon.
Thank you. Sir, under the presidential infrastructure development fund, I'm aware that you have some financial commitment in the implementation of some projects, key projects, such as the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Highway. I was expecting to hear something from you concerning those projects. I didn't hear. But can you give us an update on your full financial commitment to those projects so far? Thank you, sir. My name is Dr. Leon Sigwe, Nigerian Tribune.
Good morning, all. My name is Harry Awurumibe. I write for Prompt News. My question is just very short and simple. Glad to know that we are getting consignments that are coming from June 3rd from Russia, and another coming from June 6th from Canada. But my simple question is, now those of us that are following the Ukraine-Russia war, Europe and America are frowning with people who are doing businesses, with Russia. Is it not going to affect Nigeria?
Thank you for the questions. Let me start with the very last one, actually. It's a very interesting question. When the Russia crisis started with Ukraine, it was very explicit that fertilizer and oil and gas were not part of the ban. You speak about it, but every day Europe still buys gas from Russia. Fertilizer was not included. But the challenge then was most of the banks were afraid to deal opening letters of credit. It took us a while to solve that problem, get all the clarifications, and then solve it. So I can assure you that that decision was taken with full understanding of the implications, but with also full clarity of everybody involved, that fertilizer and food production is important for us here as a country. But we also needed to diversify, which was why we also looked at other places that we hadn't done business with before. Canada is quite far relative to Russia, but it became a scramble everywhere in the world. It was almost like what happened during COVID. People were buying other people's masks. So everybody, anywhere you could get it, feed your people first, and then we can fight later. So that was really purely the attitude. But I needed to be clear that fertilizer was explicitly excluded from the ban in terms of doing business with Russia. Okay, so there is no issue there. Let me deal with the issue of how much is coming from Russia, how much is coming from Canada. We have a total of 105,000 metric tons coming, of which 35,000 is from Russia and the rest is from Canada. But now that we've reestablished the Russia supply link for potash, subsequent transactions will likely come from Russia, just because it saves us time. It's 1 week shorter in terms of sailing time for the vessel from Russia versus Canada, because it's not even near Canada, it's not east of Canada, it's central Canada. That's where these things come from. So it's a long journey to get to Nigeria. So that is the answer to your question. Wasma? Yeah, but we don't disclose that in a public press briefing, and the reason is because you also are negotiating with these people, and so you this is a trade. But you can go on the website, any website, Google the price of potash, you'll see it there. But we tend not to announce this, and the reason is because when the presidency is involved, they squeeze certain things that we will not necessarily want to talk about. So I think it is fair that you respect that trade discussion. And it's very simple why. Many of them have respect for President Buhari. They might give him some discount that necessarily don't want to go and start telling other people, then it becomes an issue for everybody. That's what it is. So we can't, I'm sorry, disclose that. On the availability to the end market, and the reason I was very clear to say supply is not going to be a problem is anybody who is hoarding, it's not fair to do that. We have a food crisis, and there are agencies of government who are now involved in ensuring that people release what they have. If there are places where there's a challenge, and we're aware there are places where there's a challenge, because at the beginning people were afraid, oh, we're not going to have enough, and the natural human instinct is to try and hold back. But I'm telling you now that we're going to unleash a whole bunch of supply. I mean, at the moment, we're struggling to clear them in the ports. We have two vessels discharging now phosphate. And there's already more in the warehouses. So my sense is that as these things get its way into the market, by the time we get to the peak application season of end of June, June and July are the biggest application season, I'm hoping that this problem will be completely solved. So I'm sorry for the challenge you're facing. You're not the only one. And this is why this briefing is important. We're telling you there are 72 blenders. Raw material will not be a problem. The president has ensured we make sure there's availability. And so this is going to be available. There was a question about how much is our financial commitment to PIDF. The NSIA itself has done two things. First, the NSIA direct commitment to the PIDF projects is $300 million. Okay? That's been approved by the board of the NSIA, so that money is available and it is being spent. Two, the NSIA in its role managed the president's fund that was originally delivered to this project. What has not been spoken to here is that the NSIA, in the management of that fund, earned an additional profit of 40 billion naira, which has gone into the program. Okay, so our job is not just that we're investing. Our job is to make sure that the entire resources available to us is properly managed and directed appropriately. Thirdly, as you are also aware, the authorities of the US and Jersey came together and said the monies that we're recovering, that were recovered on behalf of Nigeria from General Abacha will be applied to this program. That's about $300 million. You know, when we had this program briefing, I think last year, people were still doubtful whether things like second Niger bridge will be done or not. I mean, I think now we have laid that question to rest. I'm going to go on to answer a question you did not ask me. 20 billion naira was what, 19 billion naira was what was invested before President Buhari came on. 100 and something billion naira on second Niger bridge has been spent since the president came along, that second Niger bridge, because I've seen that program floating around. Somebody wrote something about all the monies. All the monies involved in the building of second Niger bridge largely has been handled by the NSIA, and we can tell you over 90% of it has been spent in the administration of this president. So I think it's important that it is clear. A lot of work has been done there. Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Road is ongoing. We made more progress on Kaduna-Zaria-Kano Road, Abuja-Kaduna. The president recently approved for the NSIA, through some of the gains made from managing the PIDF, to buy 16 patrol trucks, which some of you saw was given to the police to ensure that every 10 kilometers of the Abuja-Kaduna end, there's a patrol truck to improve security. There's a lot of work now being done to get the contractors back to site and working. So you'll see more progress there. But I will encourage you, those of you who are able to do so, get to Kano, drive through to Kaduna. You'll see what is a beautiful piece of work being done on the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Road. Lagos-Ibadan ongoing, hopefully all completed and commissioned but between the end of this year and the middle of next year. Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Road sadly will go beyond that because of the Abuja-Kaduna airport. A lot of work is going on. Next set of questions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adesua, and I work with Rise News. 5 years on, I want to know how much, if we have an idea of how much we have been able to save in terms of subsidy payment and import substitution. After all, this is to help us cut costs, produce locally, and have security in food production. So how much have we been able to save? Do we have an idea? Thank you.
Okay.
Morning, sirs. My name is Yemi Adebayo from AIT. I just wanted to find out from you, sir. The Panda Agric company, you did say that this project will be commissioned in the middle of 2022. I just want to know how far have you gone about this project? If you have this confidence that we are commissioning this project in 2022, I want to know how far have you gone about it?
Sure. It's called Panda Agric. It's an NSIA agri project in Asarawa. I'll explain to that, yeah.
My name is Sunday Ode. I work for People's Daily. So I'd like to know the consignment from Russia they're expecting. I'd like to know the currency in which you are doing that transaction, in view of the fact that Russia had announced recently that its export transaction will be done with a local currency. Thank you, sir.
Yes, good morning, sir. SARS, Amaz. My name is Femi Akonde. I'm a reporter with TVC News. Yes, sir, you talked about logistic issues, especially port congestion and all of that. But another major problem is inefficient trucking system, especially in moving raw material, sometimes from the port to maybe the blending companies, and even from those blending companies to far to reach areas where the farmers mostly need these fertilizers. What are you doing to address these very problems, sir? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'll take the 4 questions. How much has been saved in terms of FX? Okay, when it was around 300,000 tons a year, we were saving FX of $150 million a year. Okay, $150 million a year. Now, of course, the quantity is gone up. I believe the FX savings is significantly bigger, but I cannot give you that number. But just even if you take $150 million a year from the start of the program, in the last 2 years, the program has gone up exponentially. I don't have that number here, but I can provide it later. But at the first instance, use $150 million a year. The program is now on its 6th year. That's the actual FX savings. What does that mean? Things we could have bought in Naira, but we ended up paying dollars for it. Limestone granules everywhere. You can get it from Bua, get it from Aliko, get it from everybody. But we were importing it before, right? So if you can go to Aliko and pay Naira and collect lime, so it's everywhere. Why do we have to keep paying dollars to import it? So these are the kind of basic math that we can give you on the FX savings, okay? Now, Panda Agric. Okay, Panda Agric, for those who are not aware, NSIA in its agriculture fund, which we announced in 2016, we raised a joint fund with a Dutch company to invest in agriculture, actual primary production in Nigeria. And the first project we did was a farm in Nasarawa State called Panda Agric. So that's what this question is about. Mr. AIT, the NSIA has a tendency to show and tell. We are telling you the commissioning is happening in July, but that's because that farm has been producing since 2020, sorry. So it is now stabilized at a point we are now willing to invite you to come and see. Already it's made a profit of 1.3 billion naira as a business. The yield on that farm is currently about 8 tons a hectare. Not GM, farmers in the room understand what that means. We're not using genetic modified crops, no. This is actual proper farming practice. Learning how to, okay, we're a bit more sophisticated because we do center pivot, it's irrigated, so we crop 3 times a year. But if you go there, you see 6 Dutch people who live there. That's where they live, in the farm. And we wanted to use that to show that farming can actually work in Nigeria. When we're doing the commissioning, I hope some of you can come, because it's just 1 hour and 20 minutes drive from here to where Panda, the farm, is. It's also a milling factory, so we produce maize, we produce soy, and we produce feed. If you buy a feed brand for chicken called Premium Feeds, it's actually 50% owned by the NSIA. So I think it's important, please can you patronize our business? It would really be very nice if you can do that. But that is what Panda Agric is. It's successful, it's running profitably, we're very happy with it. The commissioning is just to say, come and see what we've done, as opposed to come and see what we're about to do. Which currency? Blenders pay us Naira, and we pay them in the currency that we can transact in. At the moment, it's dollars, because like I said, fertilizer is actually excluded. Okay, it's excluded from, because they understand if you restrict it too much, the world will starve. So there's an agreement that everybody has reached around what to do with fertilizer. So I think it's important that we leave it at that, please. And then inefficient trucking system, TVC. Let me tell you, by the way, you're right. It's a big problem. But we do most of our port clearing now in One, not Lagos, because of the issues you raise in Lagos. The trucking system is a bit more efficient. We clear all our most of our vessels now in One, but we do the two ports. We do Apapa and we do One. The blending plants in the southwest, Golden and Premium. Who else is in the southwest? Sunshine. I mean, there's two of them. I don't remember all of them. When we started, I knew everybody, but now I don't. But everybody in the southwest will pick up their products from Apapa, and those in the other parts of the country pick it up from One, and we just have to do what we have to do. Ultimately, what will be an ideal solution, quite frankly, in this country, and it's a project that I think the NSIA is looking at very, very closely. I was in Warri last week, looking at what can be done in Warri. Because if you remember, there is a rail track that runs from Warri all the way to Itakpe, right? So, and this is an idea for entrepreneurs who exist here also. Why can't we build a whole bunch of big warehouses in Kogi and then land them in Warri and just train it to Kogi, and then from there start distributing. From Kogi it's easier to get to Kaduna, get to Kano, get to all these places. So there's work to do. There's work to do, plenty. And it is solvable. If we dredge the Niger, we can barge these things, right? Put it on a barge and just float it. Many of you are aware that most of the equipment used to build Ajaokuta were actually floated by barge on the River Niger to Ajaokuta to build the plant. I was a young engineering student seeing these things being happening at the time. And, so there's opportunity in the country. We cannot all just be doing the same thing, grown men running around in Apapa ports. Nigeria has how many ports available? There's Warri, there's Koko, there's Borutu, there's Port Harcourt, there's One, there's Apapa, there's Tinkan. So there's a lot that can be done. We just need to think about how to solve this issue. So at the moment, we're using 2 port facilities, but we're now working on seeing how many others that can be done. Mr. Ransi, who runs this program, the NSIA board recently approved for us to look at creating distributed storage across the country. If we really want to solve this, it's solvable. We just need to sit down and do the work, and we're within the limited capacity that we have at the NSIA, we're working on it. Any more questions? We're done for now? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'm sorry that we started late. It's my fault. My apologies for that. Femi, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uche Orji. You see that he was still raring to go. And for farmers in the room like Tony and aspiring farmers like myself, who also is a farmer? Oh, Malam too is a farmer. So this has been quite enlightening. It has been informative and educative. And I'm sure you agree with me that this administration has done a lot. From 4 blending plants to 72. It's a lot. It's a lot. Let's talk about it. Let's noise it. Let's disseminate this information. Yes, Nigeria has challenges. Security is a big one, but that's not the only thing happening in our country. Some other good things are happening, and we depend on you to help us share this information. Let me thank the Managing Director of the NSIA, Mr. Uche Orji, for coming. He's accompanied by Mr. Ransi Ituandon, who is a portfolio manager with the NSIA. Thank you. We hope that when next we call on you, you will oblige us. It's always a pleasure to have you around. I want to thank members of the Presidential Communication Team. Alam Garba Shehu and Uche Orji are at this side of the hall with me. Others are also here. Uche, Loretta, Tolu, Saata, everyone who has contributed to the making of this, thank you very much. But most importantly, I want to thank our media friends. If we put all this together and you are not here, then it's all wasted. I never forget the parable of that man in the Bible who arranged a wedding feast. And when it was time for the feast, all his guests refused to turn up. So what did he do? He directed all his servants, go into the road. Anybody you see, force him to come in and eat. But week after week, you don't do that to us. You come, you cover our events, and you disseminate them faithfully. We want to thank you and hope to see you again next Thursday. Have a good day.